So, Daniel, what stands out to you?
What stood out was the staggering number of false claims from former President Trump. On first count, Aaron, I counted at least 30 false claims. Now, President Biden also made false claims, at least 9 false or misleading statements on first count. I'll give you some of them. He said he's the only president in a while who didn't have any troops dying anywhere in the world. Troops have, of course, died on his watch. He said he's put in a $15 per shot cap on insulin and Medicare. It's a $35 a month cap. He said it's a $200 cap on overall drug spending in Medicare. It's $2,000 a year. He said the border now has fewer crossings than when Trump was in office. That's generally not true. He said, or at least strongly suggested, unemployment was at 15% when he took office. It was actually 6.4. He said Trump wants to get rid of Social Security. Trump doesn't. He said billionaires pay 8.2% in taxes. It's much higher. He said Trump told Americans to inject bleach amid COVID. We know Trump made foolish comments about scientists studying.
I want you to take note of what happened there. This guy talks about Trump telling lies. I think he said 30 lies. But notice how he then jumps to Joe Biden. He mentions Joe Biden, and then he leads with all the false or misleading statements that Joe Biden says, right? So Trump lied way more, right? And he points this out, but for some reason he leads with Joe Biden lies, and then he gets to Donald Trump. Did you see how he did that? Now, I want to make this video to call out the liars in right-wing media and the Trump allies. If Joe Biden had done a very good debate and Trump had lost the debate, I can guarantee you that Trump and his allies will be walking around talking about, like they were before, talking about how CNN is so biased, CNN was against him and it was unfair, and the moderator of the debate said whatnot about Trump and blah, 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 and CNN is like a DNC network and all this kind of stuff. That's what they will be telling you. Don't let them get away from these lies. CNN is, in fact, trash. CNN definitely is biased towards the Democrats, not so much the left, but they definitely biased towards the Democrats. However, even with that being said, CNN is far better and far more honest than these liars like Ben Shapiro, Tim Pool, Steven Crowder, Fox News, Newsmax. All these clowns make CNN look like real journalism, right? But I'm making this video to point out the reality versus the lies. So they would claim and would still claim about how biased CNN is. And note that I do recognize that CNN does have a bias, but nothing close to the way it's presented in right-wing media, right? The way that they present CNN is more accurate to describe them, right? Look at how they're all behind Donald Trump right now. All the good things about Trump, none of the bad things. Every day, oh, Biden this, Biden that. Look, Biden tried to sit in an invisible chair, right? Super, super biased, right? Now, in contrast, CNN, the network that we know is more biased towards the liberal audience that they pander to. What did they do? They did a legit debate based on Joe Biden's responses. We can see evidence that they didn't give him access to the questions ahead of time. If CNN was the way the right-wing media presents and the way that Trump and Trump allies presents, they would have absolutely given Joe Biden the questions ahead of time, right? That'd be very easy for them to pull off behind the scenes and no one would know, right? Giving their guy the edge, right? How would you find this out? You reach out to Joe Biden directly, you give him the questions directly, only Joe Biden and you know that he has the questions, right? That is what the CNN that they present in right-wing media and Trump presents, that's what that CNN would have done. That's an easy no-brainer. You know Joe Biden's doing bad, right? It's very questionable how this performance is gonna go. You can give him a big leg up by simply giving him the questions. That clearly didn't happen. Then number two, the questions that they asked, they were just regular questions that you would expect them to ask, right? They didn't ask any questions that were kind of like trying to set up Donald Trump or whatever, right? They asked Joe Biden tough questions. They asked Trump tough questions, right? I don't think anything was particularly tough or aggressive to either candidate. Then, even though they're pointing out that there were a lot of lies that Trump said, they didn't fact check him. They allowed Trump to just say whatever. They ask him a question and he just says whatever. I mean, the toughest thing they did is they did press him a little bit on the, what was it, questions at the end? They asked him about conceding the election, and they also asked him about,
will you pledge tonight that once all legal challenges have been exhausted, that you will accept the results of this election, regardless of who wins, and you will say right now that political violence in any form is unacceptable?
Well, I shouldn't have to say that, but of course I believe that. It's totally unacceptable.
Okay, so I see what happened. So they asked him about denouncing political violence and also about conceding the election. So I kind of see why they let him get away with not really saying what they asked him to say. They asked him if he would say that the political violence is never the right thing to do or something like that, and he didn't, right? But it's kind of a gray area because he's really slick in the tactic that he utilized, which is basically he agrees without actually saying what he agrees to. So then he technically doesn't say that, the violence is wrong, but he has cover because he said yes, right? So he's not willing to say political violence is wrong. I don't stand for it. Anybody that supports me should not be using violence. He refuses to say that, right? So those who want to play games, think about why that is. With all of what's happened, with the fact that January 6th happened, regardless of whether you think police let them in or whatever it is, it happened and people died. The fact that even after that, he's unwilling to actually say the words, right? Do you think that anyone who might be violent watching that debate and hearing him just saying, yes, of course, that's going to move anyone compared to actually hearing Trump, with his own words, denouncing the violence and saying that, my supporters, please don't do this. He refused to do that kind of stuff on January 6th, and he still refused to do it in the debate. But I guess technically, because he did technically say, CNN didn't press him on it. But if CNN was as biased as the right-wing media has told, they wouldn't allow him to get away with that. They would have pushed back and say, well, can you actually say it? Like, you say yes, of course, but what are you saying yes, of course, to? Right? They would have pushed him on that. To just let him get away with that, not having to say the words, that's not what a network that is, as the right-wing media has described, would do. But the other thing is they did push back on the not conceding election. I think they pushed back on it 2 or 3 times. I think that was the toughest thing that they did. Now, that's what they're supposed to do, right? When we compare the image that a Tim Pool would give you with CNN, this is not an example of them being biased and against Trump. The guy that makes them so much money, right? The guy that got them awards. Supposedly they're against that guy. This is not that, right? Conceding the election is a valid question that should be asked. It's been a major point with Donald Trump. He still has not conceded the 2020 election. So them asking him that's not any like, oh my goodness, they're in the camp of the Democrat. No. And that was the toughest thing they did. Again, they allowed Trump to use their platform to put out whatever talking points he wanted to. Right? He was freely able to just say whatever he wants. Like, we were the best and this and that and Joe Biden, this and whatever. This is what happens. These guys in right-wing media, they say stuff, right? They just make things up, right? They're hyperbolic or whatever. And then if things end up aligning with the things that they were saying in any way at all, then it's like, we told you so, we're right on everything, right? But when they're not right, there's no accountability. They were all talking about how CNN is so biased and against Trump and it's unfair, and Bannon saying that Trump should drop out, whatever. And then we do the debate. The questions are just legit questions. They don't even do fact checking, fact checking is not like anti-Trump thing, right? To me, that's part of moderating a debate. They didn't even do that much, right? Just like I had predicted. One of my predictions about how the debate would go is that CNN would bend over backwards to some degree to present this image of neutrality, right? Yes, they're pandering to a Democrat-leaning audience, but ultimately, part of their brand and their concern is, we're not a biased whatever. We're real journalism, right? We're real journalists, right? That's a big obsession. Like, we have to both sides everything. So I knew they were going to do something to kind of dispel any kind of idea that they're biased, right? So, they weren't even willing to fact check Trump, right? And then, so they don't fact check during the debate, and then immediately after the debate, they don't jump right in. Okay, now we're going to immediately like, oh, there's so many lies. No, I think it took them close to an hour or over an hour before they actually did their fact check video, which I showed you a little bit of right there. And then even in that moment, they claim that Trump made most of the lies, 30 lies that he told, but yet they still leaning more against Joe Biden than Donald Trump, right? Where is the CNN that we have been sold by Trump and his allies? By right-wing media. Where is this super biased CNN, right? That's all, they hate Trump and they want to go after Trump. These guys? The ones who start off with Biden's claims, which, I don't know, a few of them seem like they would align with the state of his brain during the debate. It's like he's mixing up numbers as opposed to Trump is just straight up lying. Like, if you look at the stuff that Joe Biden says, like, he got numbers wrong. Now, did he intentionally get them wrong, or was he just confused? Now, considering how his debate performance was, I mean, would it be surprising for him to get numbers wrong? I mean, he was struggling to communicate. The idea that he would get the numbers right doesn't make any sense. So he's completely lost and stumbling around on everything else, but he got all the numbers right? Right? So, I mean, I don't know if they're necessarily lies. I mean, they're definitely inaccurate, but I think if I'm to guess, and I look at Joe Biden as a guy who has a track record of lying for decades. He was running for president in the 80s and actually pulled out because of his deceit. This is a guy who claimed he was doing something with Mandela. And I mean, he's been lying for a long time. But that being said, I think a more likely explanation for the reason that these numbers were off is that Joe Biden just had a horrible night and he was just, he was having some cognitive issues, right? But regardless, the fact that a network that's supposedly biased against Trump would point out that Trump lied way more than Joe Biden and then lead with the Joe Biden lies or misinformation. They didn't say lies, they had misinformation, false or misleading. Like everything that we're looking at is going counter to the arguments made by Trump and his allies and right-wing media in terms of how they present CNN. What we're seeing, the reality what we're seeing of CNN is that CNN is far more honest and objective than all of these people that are critiquing it. Certainly the part of the left-wing media that seems to align with the right wing for some reason, right? Their whole content is about how Biden sucks and the Democrats suck. That's all they do all day. Little to say about the Republicans, little to say about the right. Those folks, right? Their description of CNN is inaccurate because CNN is showing themselves to be more honest than these guys. And absolutely the way that they are described by the right-wing media, that's not the reality of what we saw during the debate. Think for a second. Imagine any of the leading right-wing media folks moderating a debate between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Imagine Joe Biden saying stuff that's incorrect. And let's say Tim Pool is doing the moderation. Do you think Tim Pool would sit there and let Joe Biden say stuff that's incorrect and he wouldn't push back? Come on, man. Come on. You know he would say something, right? And then also imagine if if Tim Pool is a moderator or Steven Crowder is a moderator or any of those people on Fox 5, the typical actors. Imagine that any of them are the moderator and Trump says something wrong. Imagine them saying, no, that's not true, actually. President Trump, apologies, but, or respectfully, that's actually not true. They wouldn't be pushing back on Trump, but they would definitely be pushing back on Joe Biden. So think about that. The people who would be what they describe in CNN as, the people who would be there, pushing back on Joe Biden, but being soft on Donald Trump, are talking about how biased CNN is, when in reality, CNN didn't push back on nothing Trump said, and then they focus on Biden lies over Trump lies. Come on, man. And then also, immediately after the debate, what's the first thing CNN did? They did a roundtable, and they were like, Joe Biden was horrible. This was a horrible performance. Come on, man. Where is the CNN that is, completely all DNC, all Democrat? They hate Donald Trump. Where's that CNN? And it wasn't just one person. I thought it'd be like one person who stands up. No. I think across the board, all the hosts in that panel were going after Joe Biden, saying how horrible he did. That's what CNN in reality did, right? They did a neutral debate, even beyond neutral. It's like almost like it was biased towards Trump because they let Trump say a bunch of crazy stuff, didn't push back. Like if you're going to say any bias, there was a bias towards Trump in terms of like they did things and conducted it in a way that was beneficial to Trump. Yet, I can't think of anything they did that was beneficial to Joe Biden, right? Again, dealing with reality and facts, that is what we saw, right? And again, in contrast, none of these folks who love to attack CNN would have done anything near that level of sort of neutrality, theoretical neutrality, right? Because again, I would say not necessarily neutral, I would say biased slightly towards Trump, who, if he wins, that will be immensely financially beneficial to CNN. CNN is the same network who, weren't they trying to offer Trump a show during the 2016 election, like around that time, not during the election, but around that time? They were, behind the scenes talking to him in a positive way. I think they were trying to help him with his debate performance or whatever. Like, these are the people who we're supposed to believe they hate Trump. Trump, the guy who gave them their awards, who gave them so much boost in their ratings and money that they made off of Trump, right? So there's the reality, and then there is these lies and the illusion painted by Trump and his allies in right-wing media, right? It didn't happen. And there's not going to be any accountability for any of these people for all of their, distortions of reality of what CNN is going to be so biased or whatever. It didn't happen. It didn't happen, folks, right? We're right on everything and you guys are wrong on everything, right? Who in the right-wing media is going to step up and say, you know what? CNN did a good job, right? At least in comparison to the way we presented it. Like, we were smearing CNN, right? And again, I ain't no CNN fan. CNN is definitely biased. CNN represents the junk part of our media. So in mainstream media, the fries and milkshake and burgers, that's CNN and MSNBC. That's why we always talking about them, right? Keep in mind, we got CBS, we got ABC. ABC, I think, is one of the best in mainstream media, right? But we don't talk about them. Why? Because they not own all this craziness, right? CNN and MSNBC, I would think, one of the most biased networks, right? But yet, the right-wing media is so disconnected from reality that even though CNN is very biased, compared to the rhetoric from right-wing media, CNN is very objective and they're giving you real journalism, right? Again, if you look at the rhetoric from right-wing media and you compare it to the reality of what CNN is, compared to that, CNN looks like real solid journalism, right? In contrast to the very people critiquing CNN being, man, if CNN is fries and milkshake and burgers, right-wing media is crack, cocaine, fentanyl, right? Just like sugar water. I don't know what's worse than just fries and milkshake. They are the absolute bottom of the barrel, and the idea of them critiquing anyone else, absurd. This is the Debate Me channel. Debate me in the comment section below. Click on the like button, subscribe, smash that bell. Be well.